Good afternoon and welcome to Leading Age Services Australia Insights from the Aged Care Pricing Commissioner. My name is Nigel McGothigan and I am the Member Advocate for LASER. And with me we actually have John Dicer, the Pricing Commissioner. Just before we start, in terms of actually questions, you will find a chat box located on the webinar. If you actually will just type your questions on there and we will actually get to them at the end of our session. John will actually take a few minutes to go through some of the slides and give you a high-level discussion around some of the ACPC stuff, and then we'll actually have questions at the end. If you have any difficulties, you can actually dial 1-800-896-323, and that's the redback support, and you'll actually find that also listed on your chat box. So to begin with, we would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. And I also would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So this is a conversation with the Pricing Commissioner for all of our members and non-members, and we're very happy John is actually with us at this point of time. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Nigel. It's really nice to be here, and I really welcome the opportunity to have a chat to you about what my role is about. And I think if you see when we go through the slides that I've tried to outline a little bit about who we are, what we do, how we go about doing it. We'll pick up some things from the annual report. We'll look at some initiatives in terms of what work I would like to carry out in my office over the next 12 months. And also perhaps touch upon things such as the Royal Commission, which I think everyone is going to be incredibly interested in over the next 18 months. So the short intro, I started on the 21st of May. I have very little experience in the aged care sector. I have lots and lots of experience in the legal sector. As you may well pick up from the slide, I have about 30 years experience in infrastructure projects at a government level. I've been General Counsel at a number of corporations, including the Olympic Coordination Authority, where I worked for 4 years and during the Olympics, and also had a lot of time with aviation bodies. I was previously the General Counsel with Air Services Australia for 9 years before joining as the Aged Care Pricing Commissioner. How I came to be about how to be the Aged Care Pricing Commissioner is a little bit, I think, interesting, and I won't bore you with it, I'll be very quick. I was approached back in December of last year by a person in Canberra who does these type of things saying, would you be interested in a job as the Aged Care Pricing Commissioner? My initial response was, it doesn't sound like me. So I said, okay, send me the information through. And I went through the government process, and in May, Minister Wyatt appointed me to the role. And Minister Wyatt, when I first met him, said he was looking for a fresh set of eyes. So, well, he certainly got those in me. I think it's a fascinating time to be involved in aged care and very much looking forward to the challenge. I really welcome this opportunity to talk to LASER members today, and it's not just a one-way street. I would really like to hear from you about how we're doing either through Nigel or LASER, and the idea ultimately is for me to provide the industry and providers such as yourself with exemplary service. I can only do that if I find out what we're doing well, but probably more importantly, what we're not doing as well as we could. So very much a two-way street. I'll move on. Look, I'm very ably supported by a team of 6 ladies, sort of a line from Little Britain. I'm the only guy in the office. So the ladies who support me, I have 4 assessors. They are exceptionally talented people. 2 of them come from an international aid background. 1 is a registered nurse, and the other lady, from an assessor's point of view, and I won't name them for privacy reasons, has a large background in the Department of Health. I'm also ably supported by a database operator, and she provides me with all the support I need, particularly in putting the annual report together, but also in terms of what I would like to do in updating things like our website and our forms. So she's exceptionally talented. The other person who is an incredible support to me is my executive assistant, Liz. I have named her, but she's readily available to take your calls and try and find me should I not be available. But my details are pretty available, and I'd really encourage you to either contact me through email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, or if you want to get my mobile number, again, it's freely available. Please feel free to give me a ring at any stage. So I'm very ably assisted by a great team. I put the vision up because one of the things that I really want to work on over the next 12 months, and we'll get to that in terms of work plans, is what the government saw as the role of the Commissioner. And in essence, it is really there to ensure that the residents get value for money. My role is there to look at residential accommodation in aged care and say to a provider, if you're looking at charging more than $550,000, you need my approval. I think it's to provide transparency. We go about it in a number of ways to ensure that there's some equality in terms of the provision of accommodation, and we do that by looking at medium house prices and other things. But it's also to make sure that we're not putting an overly burdenistic approach on providers such as yourself. And I'll get to this later about some of our work plans, but I really want to get that balance right between ensuring that I provide oversight in terms of residential accommodation and that value flows through to the resident, and also making sure that the way I go about that is to ensure that I get the right level of information. Not information that's useful, but information that I really need and which is crucial for me making that decision. So at the end of the day, I can put my hand on my heart to the best of my ability and say that I believe I've discharged my statutory obligations accordingly, and also according with the government objectives of trying to keep regulation to a minimum, only placed upon resident or providers a burden or a requirement which I think is absolutely necessary. So it's getting that balance right, and I think if we keep, from my point of view, my office and me, keep that objective and vision in mind, I think we hopefully will go a long way to achieving a pretty good outcome, not only for the office, but also for the industry and providers such as yourself. So
John, what does the ACPC do?
Well, in terms of the Aged Care Pricing Commissioner, our role is to actually look at effectively two things. One, we look at refundable accommodation deposits, and they come to my office when a provider seeks to charge a RAD above 550. The 550 mark was determined by the Minister. How it was chosen is interesting, and there's also people may recognise that there's a recommendation in the Tune review that the actual ministerial limit goes up to 750. That recommendation, as everyone knows, is still with government. I may touch upon that a little bit later. So the other aspect that we look at, which is also an interesting one, is that we look at review and applications for extra service fees. Interesting thing, and you may have picked it up from annual report last year, that we received 45 applications to increase extra service fees, and we also received one application to decrease an extra service fee. I don't think we're going to get a huge number more because I don't think the extra service provider status is changing, but I think we will actually get more increases or applications to increase the extra service fees, because we might touch upon in shortly is that there's pressures on RADs. RADs seem to be going down. Providers are going to be looking at extra sources of revenue. If it's not RADs, what are they? Well, extra service fees, one. Additional service fees, another. And you're going to look at those type of things and see what they cover. One of the challenges, I think, from my office is really to ensure that we have a clear delineation as to what falls in the additional services fee bucket and what falls in extra service fee. And I know there is a departmental committee looking at additional service fees and what that actually comprises. I think that will give a lot of benefit to the industry, because having a chat to a lot of people over the course of the 6 months I've been in a role, that clarity perhaps was there at the beginning, but certainly is not there now. So extra service fee is something which some providers do, not everyone does, but I think it's an area that we'll probably see a little bit more of a use of in time to come. The other one, which is the other functions conferred by the Ministerial Law, well, none of that's come to my bailiwick as yet, but the Tune review has picked up a couple of recommendations which we'll touch upon shortly. Sure.
So the RADs you've just spoken a little bit about. Do you want to talk just a little bit more around that?
Sure. The factors that we look at when we go and have an application for a RAD is to say, okay, what does the room look like? I'm really interested in photos. Photos can tell me a lot. I have the ability to look at the size of the room. I look at the accommodation. I look at the furnishings. I look at the fittings. I look at access to common areas. I look at the size of the ensuite. Is it a private ensuite or is it a shared ensuite? I look at things such as the RAD history. Has a provider been able to acquire or receive those RADs over the last 12 months? And I think a lot of the providers, such as yourselves, have a pretty strong RAD history, and that really gives me an idea that the pricing that you're seeking is a pretty honest pricing and that is achievable. Some cases that I've seen, and it's no criticism of anyone, that people are struggling to get some of the RADs, but it's really making sure that we have a good understanding of how that facility has stacked up over time, looked at their sort of take-up rate. We also look at occupancy rate, and I think most people will see that that's come off in time. Probably used to be mid-90s%, probably dropped to the low 90s now. And the other one is we're interested in is looking at supported residents. The other aspect, which I think is really crucial from my point of view, is the pricing rationale. How do you go about establishing your price? Well, you can pick up medium house prices, you can pick up price per square metre of room, you can look at your construction costs, you know, and that's how you might establish value. But we want to, and I'm quite concerned about this, and making sure that when information comes to me from a provider, that I feel confident that the pricing rationale, your business case, your investment strategy is there. And the other aspect, which is really crucial to me, is to understand how you might be actually applying that to a facility. In one sense, the construction cost is easy because you might just divide the total construction cost across the number of rooms, which gives you sort of a benefit. But the other thing I'm really looking at is how does that flow back to the resident? As I said before, my objective is to ensure that value flows to the resident. So the review that we do is very much a desktop review. I think the aspect is that it's really important from my point of view to get out and see as many facilities as possible. I remember sitting in a Melbourne hotel room fairly recently watching the second instalment of the Four Corners program, and it drove home to me the fact that I need to be getting out there and seeing facilities. I get a much better indication as to what the facility's like by going out there. And I've seen facilities in Melbourne, and I've seen facilities in Adelaide. I've been out in Sydney. The Minister's provided me with a list of facilities that I will go and visit early in the new year in Perth. But I will get out there because I really want to feel that I've seen a good representative sample of facilities right across the country, and it's not just done on desktop review. Logistically, the majority will be, but over time, I really want that percentage of actual physical inspections that might help me. So they're the type of factors that we look at when we get an application for a RAD.
Perfect. So what about extra services? We just touched on that previously. What about extra services?
Yeah, the extra services is sort of an area to me which I'm not totally comfortable in at the moment. I have a fairly good handle upon what we need to do, and I feel relatively comfortable about what we've done in terms of discharging obligations. But again, there really needs to be that clarity. And I think at the moment, even if you look at the definition, it talks about provision of a significantly higher than average standard. As a lawyer, those sort of words are open to a few interpretations, but we really look at the quality and range of food, we look at the recreation, entertainment and personal interest activities. Again, it's quite a subjective application, it's a subjective interpretation, and to some extent we really need to start testing providers as to whether those values are flowing through. And I think providers such as yourself may be getting a little bit of questioning from some residents, and I certainly have over the last few months, where a daughter or son may ring on behalf of their dad and say, look, he's in an extra service facility, or my mum's in an extra service facility. Those charges went up 20% plus last year. They're looking at going up the same this year, and the provider says they may well go up to the same extent next year. I have the ability to approve a 20% increase plus the CPI. So at the moment, it's around about a 22%. 20% is the maximum I can approve. So I'm looking at whether those fees need to be at the higher end or need to be at a lesser percentage. I'm not saying that they won't be, but it's an area that I think I'm getting some feedback from residents to say, can you look at that? And my objective is to look at that and consistent with my obligations. So extra service fees, as I said, is an area which I want a lot more clarity about. I'm working with the department not only on the additional services side, but extra services to get that clarity and I'm writing a paper through to the department which expresses my views on the extra service side, and then hopefully we can get the department and the policy people together and we come up with some guidance. And I think the additional service work the department's doing will also feed into that aspect as well.
And they're actually meeting today, I hear. So
I believe that's the case.
Excellent.
Yep.
So you've been in the role for what, almost 6 months, or just
shy of 6 months? 21st of November is 6 months.
Oh, not so you're counting.
I've got 5 days grace.
Fantastic. So we've just you've just released the report, the annual report. Do you want to just give us an overview of that report?
Yeah, I can do that. Look, last year was an interesting time to come into the role because it was the end of the first 4 years. And as you know, under the legislation, your applications are valid for 4 years, and after 4 years, they lapse. So we got a lot of applications last year to say that we'd still like to actually charge those rates, and to do that, we need effectively a fresh approval. So last year, whilst the numbers look very high on a percentage basis, there was an 85% increase on the numbers we received previously. Last year, we received close to 539. We received 539 applications, and the previous year, I think, was 291. So massive increase. Of the 539, there were 220 renewals, and as you see, we received them from a number of providers for a certain number of facilities and close to 3,000 rooms. The area that we looked at in the applications and the flow over was that trying to come up with a process where we could actually streamline the renewal process, and I think we may get a few questions about the renewal process later on, and I'll answer that as best I can. The other areas that we looked at in terms of residential aged care providers is that there continues to be a consolidation of the providers over the period. We've sort of gone down from 1,034 in 13 to 902 as of June 2017. I do apologise that the data is a little bit dated, but that's the latest information I could get from the department at the time of publication of my report. I think you'll probably find those trends even in the area where I concentrate on, and I understand and know it's a very small segment of the aged care market, is pretty much indicative of what you're seeing right across the board. And I think there will probably be further consolidation and rationalisation of aged care providers. But I was having a quick chat to Nigel before we started today, how that actually plays out in terms of where providers go, where they might consolidate, will be interesting in terms of how the industry looks and how it's governed in the next 3 to 5 years. Look, the other thing that I think is of concern, and I suppose having the benefit of sitting on the Aged Care Financing Authority Board, is the number of new and refurbished aged care facilities that are coming on stream. The annual report did make a comment that the rate of increase is okay, but in my view, the rate of increase is tapering off. And I think that's probably consistent with the fact that the rate of return within the sector at the moment, and you've seen that through a number of reports, including Stuart Brown and also recent ACPA publications, is not great. The margins there for aged care providers are very slight, and probably if you're a listed entity, such as the 3 listed entities we currently have, if you're a board member, you'll say, well, it's not a great time for investment. Conversely to that, there are other aged care providers who I've spoken to across the industry who take a very different view. No, they're not listed and therefore don't have duties to shareholders, but they take a bit more of an aggressive, I suppose, optimistic view of what the industry is going to be. We're here for the long term, we're getting on and investing. But if we don't start picking up, or the industry doesn't start picking up the rate of increase in new facilities or refurbished facilities, or bringing other facilities up to scratch to meet the new standards, and there'll be a lot of that old stock which will need to be done. To that extent, we're going to find, as everyone says, with the baby boomers coming on board, and I'm at the tail end of that, that we're going to run short of space. So the numbers are there, but they're not increasing at the same rate as I believe they should or have been in the past.
So in terms of time turnaround for applications?
Yeah, look, we have a statutory period to do things in about 60 days. I think last year the days went from about 20 to 31. I think that's purely a reflection of the number we received of applications, including renewals. So I think as a general rule, we did a pretty good job in terms of turning them around. If you look at the time, again, where we actually asked providers to give us information, such as we issued what's called a formal request for information, that stops the clock. The actual turnaround time is 25 days. So I think we do a pretty good job. I know when I came into the role in May, that May and June were absolutely crazy months for my office. The ladies worked really, really hard to get everything turned around in the time, and we were very close at some points during that process, probably by about the middle of June, thinking, are we going to make it? But we did make it, and I was really, really proud of my office to stay within a 6-day period. It's not a period that I really want to go beyond, nor can I. But also, I think 60 days in the normal course of events is probably pretty adequate in terms of turning around an application or a renewal. So that was the turnaround time for last year.
Perfect. So you did mention stuff around the Tune report. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
I will, Nigel, just pretty briefly.
Yep.
Couple of recommendations in the Tune report which relate to me and my office were, firstly, David Tune, which I was certainly grateful for, recommended the role of the Aged Care Pricing Commissioner should be retained. So I can at least have a job for that, have a job for a little while longer. But it's to also increase the ministerial threshold from 550 to 750. Everyone knows that the Tune report is still essentially with government, and whether they do increase it or not, that's not for me to say. But if you do look at my statistics and there was an increase of that magnitude, well, probably 75% of the applications that I currently receive would not come to my office because 75% fall within the range of about $550,000 to $800,000. The other one he talked about was an automatic link between the accommodation payment and median house prices. Well, whether the government does it or not, again, it's a policy decision for them. Again, what I said before is, well, that might be helpful, but it won't be determinative as to what price will be because median house price is just one factor that my office takes into account when I'm looking at a RAD. We are seeing some falls in median house prices across the country, particularly in the Sydney and Melbourne markets, and everyone who watches the property markets in those capital cities will know that. How far it comes off, what impact upon it has on RADs, only time will tell. The other role that he recommended was an expansion of my powers in terms of looking at additional services and uncapping them. If that came to my office, that would be good, but it's a bit like on the first point where if the RADs went up, well, a lot of work would go away. If the third one came through, well, my work would go up. So in terms of resourcing, what I'm saying is I might lose people on one hand, but pick them up on the other. So the focus would very much change over time. So I think everyone's keen for those reviews to occur. I know a lot of industry bodies, not only LASER, but COTA have also called out for the reforms which are currently sitting with government to be implemented, regardless of what the Royal Commission does. But those decisions then, when they come out, are purely decisions for government.
You've just mentioned the Royal Commission there. Do you want to just give us a bit of a brief overview in terms of your experience? Yeah,
I can. Look, I'm a lawyer with 30 years standing. I don't have any experience at a Commonwealth Royal Commission level, but I've been through, in New South Wales, 2 very extensive special commissions of inquiry, both related to the rail industry. And my observations in terms of the Aged Care Royal Commission is that they will probably follow the model very closely that you've seen with the Kenneth Hayne Royal Commission into the financial services industry. I think what you'll find also is that the Commission will start establishing itself over the next couple of months. We all know there's been a directions hearing, and you will probably find that industry and represented parties who will be invited to attend the Royal Commission, it's an invitation where you don't have an opportunity to say no, will be asked to provide certain documentation probably between now and the end of January. And then the Commission will do its hearings probably starting early in the year. The Commission now has its own website. From a legal point of view, I'm very interested to see which counsel assisting that the Commissioners appoint. It'll be interesting to see where they choose them from. Kenneth Hayne chose 2 barristers out of Victoria, but he's a Victorian. Whether Joseph McGrath and Linnell Briggs will choose someone from, say, the Western Australian Bar or the ACT or New South Wales Bar, it's up to them. But those barristers will be no doubt senior counsel. quite eminent in the field, and if you looked at the Financial Services Royal Commission on the news every night, they don't take any prisoners, so it won't be an easy time. The other aspect, I think, which is crucial, is that organisations, including myself, need to prepare themselves, because you may well get a request for information on Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, asking to provide documentation by 10 o'clock on the Tuesday, and you do not have a choice. You have to provide it, and excuses such we didn't have enough time will not cut ice with the Royal Commission. Mm-hmm. The other aspect will be is see how the focus of the Royal Commission changes, and as you probably observed from the terms of reference, the focus very much in the early stages is to look at the issues that are coming back, and that will be sort of the really crucial part and the hard part, mm-hmm. as about what happened and what shouldn't have happened. It will then change its focus in the future, and I think you can see that from the letters patent in terms of reference. Sure. How industry bodies go about getting the view across will be interesting. I'm not suggesting people should put their hands up and say, look, we'd love to provide a statement, mm-hmm. but my experience is that by doing that, at least you can actually control the message that comes out of the Royal Commission, rather than actually just being asked to attend and ask questions which you do not have any chance to prepare for. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a fascinating 18 months, and I think, you know, you've seen the timetable: preliminary report October 2019, final report and recommendations in April 2020. It's a long time away in my view. I thought it might have been a bit shorter, but I think clearly the government wants to make sure that everyone's had a chance to have their say. The Royal Commission is not going to actually miss anything. Mm-hmm. Even from my point of view, whilst they occupy quite a small space in the aged care landscape, I'd be very surprised if they didn't look at financing and pricing, mm-hmm. at some stage come and have a chat to me. So, sure. Not that I'm asking, but we'll wait and see.
Absolutely. Okay. So for 2018 and 2019, the Pricing Commissioner's work plan, what have you got planned?
I think it's probably the fact that I look at what I do and say, I think we do it well, but mm-hmm. I think we need to do it better. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because the Royal Commission's coming up, but it's something that I think coming into the role with a fresh set of eyes, that as an office we need to do. One of the things that I'm really keen about is ensuring that I get the application form right. People out in the industry may know that we currently have two application forms. One is just the general application, and one's the renewal, which we introduced earlier this year, with the specific intention of getting it through the renewal process. And I think to that extent it achieved its objective. Having had the benefit of looking how those forms operate over the last 6 months, my view is we don't need two forms, we only need one. And I've written to a large part of the industry, including Laser, and I've created what I've called an industry reference and working group. And Nigel here is the Laser representative on that working group, and their task over the next hopefully 3 to 4 months is to assist me review the application form and come up with a more streamlined version. So it achieves both my objective of ensuring that I get the right information, but also gets the balance right in terms of the information and level of detail that I ask providers to submit. The other areas that I really want to get more involved with is getting out and seeing facilities. I've been fortunate to go out and see a number of them set across different states, and I'll continue that exercise. It gives me visibility of what I'm approving. I really want to actually look at our internal process, and I look at our website, and one of the things that is a website which I think needs a bit of updating is that the FAQs, the checklists, the guides need to be current. The other areas that I think I'd like to jazz up a little bit is communication. I don't want to just be communicating with industry through a webinar, which I'm really grateful for today, but really is the only opportunity in the past that I've seen to go out to industry is through the annual report. Mm-hmm. And it's not a comprehensive annual report, and I think it's one of those things where you look at it and think, well, it's pretty much the same as last year. I'm really hoping the next annual report is radically different, but I do want to get out there. I do want to actually engage with industry a lot more. I do want to get your feedback, and I do want to make sure that if you come to my website or the Commissioner's website, that actually you find it interesting and relevant and hopefully of value. I'd also like to publish a newsletter twice a year. And I've only got a team of effectively 5 or 6 people, and they're all part-time, and their day job is to actually do applications for grads and extra service fees. But I'm actually asking them to develop a newsletter, which I'd like to send out around about April and October every year, which gives the industry, I think, in an attractive form, some indications as to what I'm seeing in terms of activities, trends, concerns. But it's also a means where you can actually come back to me and let me know how I'm going. Not just through laser, that if you choose that, that's great. But I'd love to hear directly from you if you think that's appropriate. So I've got a work plan. I'm sitting down with my team on a development day on the 28th of November in Sydney, going through these things, and everyone in the office has a bit of a part to play during that development day and present how they want to do things, very much in a blue sky thinking, and then we'll work out from a practical point of view what we can and cannot achieve, not only from a resource point of view, but from a dollar point of view as well. There's a lot to do, and I think it's a good time.
Perfect. Yeah. And as John has actually outlined, I've been appointed to represent LASER at this working group, and I will always come back to our members with the variations to what we decide at that particular group as well, and always looking for your input in terms of that space. John, thank you for that overview. I think we actually might go to a few questions if you don't mind. The first question we have here is from Cameron Willoughby. And Cameron's asking a question around for the RAD approval greater than 550 in terms of the CPI. Which number should they be using?
Cameron, thank you for your question. There is nothing to stop me using a different CPI index number. It could be any one I choose. I probably would like to see use the All Cities one. And I think that's an issue that I'd like to get clarity of through the working group and the application form. So there's no doubt, I think, as to how we go about using the CPI and which index we should use. It's something that I probably would like to have a look at more and say, look, is it worthwhile picking up individual cities? I think probably there's some similarity between CPI, which might relate to Sydney and Melbourne, but I'm not quite sure whether a CPI for Adelaide or Brisbane and Perth might be the way to go. My feeling at the moment, without locking it at this present moment, is I'll probably go with the All Cities one.
Excellent, thank you. Some people have actually asked about the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint will be made available to everybody actually online, as well as the report, the annual report that John spoke about as well. And they'll actually come out via the laser. We'll actually be putting out a survey about this particular webinar, and Talisha will also send out the PowerPoint and also a copy of the annual report. Just keep sending your questions through in terms of that. So John, you talked about the work that's going to happen in terms of 2018, 2019 in terms of this working group and looking at the renewal process. What's your main thought around that? How can we actually make it a little bit more simplified for our members?
I suppose from my point of view, the way I've looked at it is that I've got two forms, an application and renewal. I only need one. I go through it and say, well, what are we asking for? And even simply that every time you want to add an accommodation group, we then say, can you fill out another schedule? So there's a part 2, and if you want to add a third accommodation group, there's a part 3. Simple thing like a drop-down box. So you just add additional accommodation groups on the one form. To me, should make my life easier, but I'm hoping it from a provider's point of view, makes your life easier. The other aspect is I want to be precise about the information that I want in terms of the rooms. Yes, photos are crucial, not only of the room itself, but the ensuite. But often, providers will say, we've got majestic views of the bedroom, from the bedroom of the Pacific Ocean. Well, if you've got that, show us. Okay, that's really crucial, okay? It's a bit of a selling point, and some providers do it exceptionally well. Some do it not quite as well, but I think if I'm really clear about what information I'm asking about the rooms and also the common areas, which are really important as well. If I can get that really succinctly, that'll help. One of the things that's come through about the forms at the moment is also sometimes the level of information. And I know we exchanged correspondence, my office and Laser earlier in the year about evidence of value. And the question will be is, how is that interpreted? I think our response back to how you establish value is up to us. And I think that was a perfectly acceptable comment. But I think that the question that was raised in the first place just meant that we weren't clear about what type of information we sought in value. It could be a land valuation, it could be insurance certificate, it could be a certificate from your CFO. It could be something of that nature, and maybe we just need to say, in the context of scenario A, this is the evidence of value that we require. So it's very clear. And I'm really hoping I can get a form which is really streamlined, not quite tick a box, but it doesn't mean that you're actually employing a person full-time to actually go through an application and then have to go back out and get a valuation which is less than 2 years old. If your facilities haven't changed in the last 3 years, I should be able to rely upon the valuation you may have acquired in 2015-16 with a stat deck to say nothing's changed from your CFO. So it's quite evidence-based, but it's also evidence which is supported by a statement to provide compliance. So it's getting that balance right, Nigel.
Excellent. One of our members has actually sent through a question about extra services. They're finding occupancy a real challenge at the moment and want to entice potential residents with discounted extra service fees, and in some cases even waiving those fees for a totally for a particular period. Are they allowed to do that?
Don't quote me on this, because I say it's an interesting area of extra service fees. My feeling is that yes, you can, but your arrangement with your resident, you need to look at that from a contractual point of view and see whether you have the ability. But my feeling is that if you actually are looking at charging a RAD, or you're looking at charging an extra service fee for your facility, those are the maximum fees you can charge your resident. You can charge less. If you charge less than $5.50, you don't need my approval as a RAD. If you charge an extra service fee less than what's been approved, I don't think anyone's going to object. So my feeling is that if you've got approval to charge an extra service fee at $40, but you're finding that as a bit of a prohibitive in getting people in, I can't see any reason why you can't drop that to 20. And it would be clearly an arrangement you have with that individual person coming into your facility, and you could change the contract accordingly. So those are, in my view, maximum, but there's something on the extra service thing that I just need to do a bit of homework about, and it's something, if I can, I'll take it on board and come back to Nigel with a more definitive answer that's acceptable.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Are there any more questions? Nothing's actually coming up through our screen at the moment. Nothing at all. Excellent. As John said, in terms of this process, is that we're happy to take any questions, and I'm happy to actually work on behalf of members with John's office to actually ensure that we actually get the right information to you in that period of time. Any questions that which we'll have after this webinar, I'm very, very happy to take. And everybody will probably know my email, which is Nigel, Nigel, capital M for Mary, at LASA, lasa.asn.au, or actually just through your normal process, whoever you actually contact as well, and they can actually get back to me, and then I can actually get on to John and his office. Well, John, thank you so much for being part of our webinar today. It's been incredibly enlightening, and I can also see from the responses that people have actually learnt a lot. And we're really willing to actually work with you and your office into the future to ensure that our residents are looked after appropriately and within your scope of practice. So thank you again for coming.
Look, Nigel, I just really like to thank you again, and also Sean for providing me the opportunity to do this, because it's not only a vehicle which I think it helps me in terms of getting clarity and learning about what I do, but hopefully it gives you guys out there and gals a better understanding of what my office is charged to do. It does occupy a small sector of the industry, but in my view, a very important one, and really keen to work with LASA and members and the wider industry generally to come up with, I hope, with a very good service provision. So Nigel's got all my contact details. If you want to contact me directly, I'm very happy for that to be done. But look, if there's anything that you want to raise in terms of questions, feel free to send it through to Nigel, and I'll get back to you through Nigel as quickly as I possibly can. But thank you for your participation and listening. I know you can't see us, which maybe is not a bad thing, but
For sure.
I really welcome the opportunity today, so thank you very much.
Excellent, thanks, John. And thank you, everybody, for actually being online and being part of our time together today. As I said, that from here, Laser will actually present the PowerPoint presentation and also a copy of the Pricing Commissioner report, annual report. And if you do have any further questions, please don't hesitate to actually contact us here at Laser. John, thank you again. It's been our privilege to host you, and it's also been an incredible privilege to actually be part of this webinar. So thank you all for being online, and we hope to hear from you soon. Take care.